There's been suggestions in Fin24 this morning that there may be a problem with one of the ways that we count the number of people who have jobs and the number of people who are unemployed in our country. It appears that when StatsSA South Africa compiled the latest quarterly labour force survey, they found that many people did not want to answer questions about whether they had a job or not. And in fact, in Joburg, the response rate was under 20%. This meant that some metros were not properly counted. It also means the figures that we use may not be properly accurate. Malerato Mosiane is the Chief Director responsible for labour statistics at StatsSA. Ma'am, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. So as I understand it, you used to use field workers. People would go out, they would knock on doors around the country, they would ask people if they were working. The pandemic happened and you had to switch to using phone calls. What happened? What changes did you see in the data that you received?
Good afternoon and good afternoon to the viewers at home. Yes, when the pandemic came in 2020, we had to switch to collecting information via telephone. But of course, we did not have all the telephone numbers for all the dwelling units that we have on our frame. So we had to adjust for that bias that we had introduced by only going to households that have telephone numbers. There might be a chance that people who have telephone numbers may have jobs, while those who don't have might not have jobs. So we had to adjust for that bias that was introduced by only going to households with telephone numbers.
I know there are ways to, I don't know how you do it because you deal with numbers, I don't, but I know that there are ways to sort of counter or account for bias. Were you able to do that and try and make the numbers more representative of reality?
Yes, we had to adjust for bias, as I have said, and if we look at the bias adjustment factors that we had, there were really not that major differences between the people who have telephones and those who don't, because the bias adjustment factor was close to 1. And before we published the results of the fourth quarter of 2020, we had also to look at the coefficient of variation to see if the sample that we have is still representative. And we publish our estimates at national, provincial, and metro level. So we found that the estimates at metro level were not very reliable. Hence, we took a decision not to publish them. We only published the estimates at national and provincial level.
So what was wrong with the data that you were able to collect at metro level? And as I understand what you do, the bigger the sample, the more likely it is to be accurate, if I've understood it correctly.
Yes.
So what was wrong with the metro figures? Yeah.
For the metro estimates, we had coefficient of variation that is more than 30%, which means that the estimates that we had were not a true reflection of what is happening in the metros. Hence, we took a decision not to publish those. And also, the estimates that we had at provincial and some at national level were also not reliable, and we had to leave them out of the publication and indicate that those estimates could not be published for quality issues that we had with them. And at the provincial level, we also had some estimates that were not reliable, and we left them out of the publication.
So was one of the problems that people just didn't want to take part in the survey? They didn't want to actually speak to someone from StatsSA South Africa on the phone, whereas when you're face-to-face with someone, it's a very different relationship.
Yes, if you have a face-to-face interaction with a respondent, you're likely to get a positive response because you're now sitting in front of the person and you can engage and try to convince them to participate. But with telephone interviews, it's a bit tricky because you're not having an eye contact with that person. So in most instances, we came across situations where the respondents would agree to participate in the interviews, but not go through the whole interview. They would drop in the middle of the interview.
Obviously, in the interest of getting good data, you would probably want to go back to field work. Now, I don't know how much you can talk about this, but I know, so I can say it for you, if you like, that your budget has been cut and has been cut dramatically, and you don't have the money that you used to get at a time when the data that you give us has never been more important. How big a problem is that for you?
With the quarterly labor force survey, fortunately for us, we still have the budget that we had before or when we started the QLFS. we have not been cut on that particular survey, so we are still able to collect the information. And the plan that we have going forward is to go back to the field so that we can have that interaction with our respondents and publicize the survey enough so that people know the importance of us getting this kind of information.
So, I mean, when you look at it all, is it possible to know if the figures are undercounting people who are employed, if they're undercounting the number of people who are unemployed, or is it not possible to actually know? Or may we find that you're not undercounting or overcounting at all?
As I said the sample that we have at national and provincial levels is representative. So it's indicative of the fact that we are not over or underestimating any of the key labor market indicators, that being employment, unemployment, and in terms of whether people are employed in the formal sector or informal sector or in which industries. We are still okay in that front, but where we had issues was at the metro level, hence we did not publish those estimates because of reliability of those estimates.
Malerato Mosiane, thank you very much indeed, Chief Director responsible for Labour Statistics at StatsSA.